Today I'm going to talk about one of the interesting problems in algebraic complexity theory where we want to compute multilinear polynomials by arithmetic circuits, and we'll see how we're going to do that. So before we start, let me introduce the notion of computation of polynomials. So we know something. This is an algorithm that we see in algorithms course, and so here this is an algorithm for 2 cross 2 multiplications. So Strassen gave the following algorithm in the sense that take two matrices A and B, they multiply to give a product C. Consider that the entries of A and entries of B are in fact variables. So now your output, this product polynomial, matrix is actually each of its entries is a polynomial in the entries of matrix A and entries of matrix B. So let's visualize this particular computation a bit more graphically as follows. So now you have the entries of matrix A as input, the entries of B as input, and we can actually construct a directed acyclic graph for computing the entries of the matrix C. So here, this directed acyclic graph has leaf nodes, which are labeled by inputs. These are variables. So these intermediate nodes are additions, multiplications, and additions again. And this is a layered structure. Further, so these edges actually take some constants. So here the constant is -1. And this is representing your Strassen's 2 cross 2 multiplication as a graph, directed acyclic graph. So you can think of this directed acyclic graph to be a hardwired circuit for 2 cross 2 matrix multiplication. So given the structure, you can just plug in values for these entries of A and entries of B, and this circuit outputs your matrix C. So now we can actually generalize this notion to compute any polynomial. So for any polynomial, so we can define a directed acyclic graph that computes it as follows. So as before, we can have leaves to be either labeled by variables or constants. So the intermediate nodes can be either additions or multiplications. So it's a leaf to root computation. It's a flow of computation from leaf to root. And so the number of addition or multiplication nodes tells you how many operations are involved. So to compute a particular polynomial, the complexity of computing a polynomial is number of operations involved. And that is the number of nodes in the graph. For example, here, I have an addition gate here, addition node here. So it takes inputs x1 and 1, and it computes a polynomial 1 plus x1. That means at every node, you're computing a polynomial. So here, this node computes a polynomial 2x1 plus x2 here, and then it multiplies with x3 and computes a polynomial 2x1 plus x2 times x3. So there is the notion of complexity of this particular model is the number of nodes. So we call it the size of this circuit, the size of this directed acyclic graph. Similarly, we can define a notion called depth. But depth is, again, since it's a graph, I can define it to be the longest leaf to root path. So depth, I'll just, it actually represents parallelizability of the circuit. So we can also define formulas as circuits whose underlying graph is a tree. So that means in this particular directed acyclic graph, when it is a tree, the computation is not reused. If the fan out of a particular node is 1, that means it is not being reused. It's only used once. So formulas are special circuits where computations are not reused. Similarly, we can also, without loss of generality, assume that our circuits are layered. So as in the previous example, we actually saw that our circuit is layered. So when I say sigma, that means it's a layer of sum gates. It's a layer of product gates. So in this example, it is not layered. So we can make this layered by adding some dummy nodes. I can actually add an addition gate here, and then I can add a dummy addition gate here to actually bring it in this format. So this conversion does not require too much of a size blow up. So without loss of generality, we can assume that the circuits that we talk about from now on are layered. So we also assume, for the sake of notation, that like the output node is also a sum gate. It's not necessary, but that's something people do. So now, as I said, if a polynomial has a small circuit, that means it can be computed efficiently. It can be computed with fewer number of operations. Similarly, if I say a circuit has small depth, that means it has efficient parallel algorithms. So now we have defined what is a model of computation, and we have defined what is the notion of efficiency. And the natural step is to define, rather classify problems into what is efficient, what is hard, and stuff like that. So that is something which you have seen with P and NP. And similarly, for polynomials, for this model of computation, we can define what is efficient and what is expected not to be efficient. So there is this notion of algebraic P, which was defined by Valiant back in 1979. So he defines a class of polynomials. In the paper, he calls them either algebraic P or P computable. Later, it got called VP after Valiant. And I don't like the last time I spoke to him, he was surprised that people are using VP, but anyway. So the class VP consists of all polynomials, say Fn, over say n variables, and bounded degree, which can be computed by polynomial size arithmetic circuits. So this is a class of efficiently computable polynomials. So now, if we have a class, we also define a complete problem. So it happens that the determinant is complete for this class of efficiently computable polynomials. Similarly, we can define something called algebraic NP as follows. It's a class of polynomials of bounded degree, which can be expressed as summation or exponential summation of VP polynomials. This is kind of a strange definition, but think of this as an arithmetization of an NP clause. So there exists M, so that M of xy is equal to 1. So now that there exists arithmetizes to a summation gate, and this polynomial time Turing machine arithmetizes to a polynomial, efficiently computable polynomial. So now, this VNP is class of all polynomials which can be expressed as exponential summation of VP polynomials. So as expected.
So I don't see the field here. So
yeah. So like yeah. So I'm pushing field under the. So for every field, yeah. So thanks to you all for making this point. So all these definitions are field dependent. Since it's a polynomial, polynomials are based on a field or a ring. So these definitions are also field dependent. So that actually brings me to the point. So permanent is canonical problem polynomial for VNP except for GF2. So there is an underlying field in these definitions. So Valiant hypothesized that VP is not equal to VNP, and in particular, permanent of a generic n cross n matrix cannot be computed by polynomial size circuits. So what does this mean? So when I say generic n cross n matrix, that means I'm taking an n cross n matrix. All of its entries are variables, distinct variables. So permanent of a generic matrix cannot be computed by polynomial size circuits. This is what he conjectured. And not only permanent, any polynomial that can be reduced for a suitable notion of reduction for VNP, they cannot. So it is conjectured that they cannot be computed by polynomial size circuits. So this is a conjecture which is long-standing. And that means to resolve this conjecture, we need to prove superpolynomial lower bounds. That means there exist explicit polynomials that cannot be computed by polynomial size arithmetic circuits. So let's also see why we should also study this VP not equal to VNP in terms of Cook's versus Valiant hypothesis. So this particular representation is from paper of Burgess back in 2000. So this is what he defines. If you give a polynomial f, you could assign a Boolean function BP of f, that I'll call it BP of f, the Boolean part of f, such that f and BP of f agree on evaluations over 0 and power n. So as in f and BP of f have same number of variables, and a function and a polynomial agree with each other over evaluations over a particular domain. So he says, so this particular definition for a polynomial can be extended to a class of polynomials. I can define something called a Boolean part of BNP, as in all the class of Boolean functions that correspond to polynomials in BNP. And similarly, I can define a class of functions that correspond to polynomials in BP. So here, on the left here, we have hierarchy of Boolean functions. These are multi-output Boolean functions, and this is a non-uniform hierarchy that I'm considering here. And then this is a hierarchy of polynomials. So what he says is Boolean parts of BNP lie just beyond sharp P. So again, this definition actually uses what the underlying field is. I'm just pushing it under the carpet. Regardless of the field, BP lies beyond sharp P. BP of BNP lies beyond sharp P. And BP of VP, its Boolean part of the polynomials that are efficiently computable, lies between NC1 and NC3 hierarchy. What is this? NC1 is class of Boolean functions, Boolean circuits, Boolean functions that can be computed at Boolean circuits of log depth, polynomial size, and bounded finite. Similarly, NC3 is a class of Boolean functions that can be computed by polynomial size, log cube depth, and bounded finite. So anyway, so those are irrelevant. Yeah.
Just a quick question, if the relation with NC2, so if the field size is polynomial, then it's also in NC2, or what's
exactly. So field size is, so field size is polynomial, you can put it in, field size is constant, you can put it in NC2. If it is not constant, then you can, field characteristic is not constant, you can put it in NC3.
Okay.
Can you give an example of a function?
Okay, so containment
Yeah, can you give an example of a function in BPBNP which is conjectured to be beyond sharp P?
I don't know of any explicit functions which are in BPBNP. I know functions which are in BPVP. So the functions in BPBNP are kind of strange. Yeah, I don't know of any explicit functions. Yeah, sorry?
Because permanent is in sharp P, so
yeah, maybe something like that. I don't know any explicit function.
I'm saying the permanent is in sharp P. So if you think of the permanent as a typical function in VNP, then it's not so clear how you get beyond that.
So permanent is in sharp P for 0 and permanent, right? It's not for every permanent.
Okay. So over GF2, then they should be the same.
Yeah, over GF2, they should actually GF2 they collapse, exactly. Like I think Yuval Ishai was saying. So this definitions change as per the field. So BP of VNP is actually equal to sharp P over GF2. So now, so now VP not equal to VNP can be thought of as a coarser separation than P not equal to NP from this picture. Further, if we were to believe that VP is equal to VNP, then the Boolean parts also collapse into each other. That means sharp P collapses into NC3. So this is like a big collapse. So put it in terms of things that we already know. So if VP is equal to VNP, then non-uniform P collapses to NP. Sorry, non-uniform NP collapses to non-uniform P. That is, P by poly is equal to NP by poly. And we know that that actually has a lot of repercussions in the sense that consequences, in the sense that PH collapses to second level, AM is equal to MA and whatnot. And we believe that these do not happen. We believe that PH should not collapse to sigma 2. So that means our assumption that VP is equal to VNP may not be true. So this is a belief based on another belief. So as we say, like, as you pointed out, as Yuval also, like both the Yuvals pointed out, here there's GRH hidden here. So GRH hidden here is because if you have a really large field, so use GRH to actually bring it down to a polynomial-sized polynomial characteristic, and then like define some functions equivalent to the polynomials. So now, okay, now if VP equal to VNP, something absurd might happen. So it is motivating to study that VP not equal to VNP. And further, Valiant made the following observations in his paper titled, "Why is Boolean complexity so difficult?" So he argues saying, if you look at algebraic model and the Boolean model, he says the set of valid algebraic identities in algebraic model form a proper subset of those in the Boolean setting. I'll give you an example. Suppose if you're computing a polynomial over GF2, and if you're computing a Boolean function, so Boolean function computation actually uses an extra identity, which is xi square is equal to xi, which the algebraic model does not use. So you could syntactically compute polynomials of higher degree and then cancel, which the Boolean function does not allow you to do. Boolean model does not allow you to do. So in particular, what he says is this algebraic model actually uses the possibility of using cancellations. It derives its power from the possibility of cancellations. So one particular example that he actually quotes is the Samuelson-Berkowitz method for computing determinant, using this closed walks and closed sequences. So this particular algorithm actually intermediately computes, it uses terms which are of really high degree, and it turns out that they cancel out. So thus giving a very efficient algorithm for computing the determinant. So this algorithm has been extended by Meena Mahajan and Vinay to show that actually there is a branching program to compute determinant. So this is where things stand, and we set out to prove super polynomial lower bounds. However, the best known lower bounds, okay, I cannot see, yeah. However, the best known lower bounds are barely superlinear for general circuits, for a very simple polynomial, and barely quadratic for formulas. So what we set out to prove is super polynomial lower bounds, and what we have is barely linear. So just superlinear.
So how do you extend the fact that for Boolean formulas we can prove cubic lower bounds?
Sorry? Yeah, Boolean, I don't know whether that implies, because like this omega n square actually came from the Boolean low bounds of omega n square using the Nikiforuk method. I think
it depends on the basis, right? It's not like you can get a cubic over any basis. Does it have?
Right, exactly. So there have been, so basically so in algebraic complexity, we actually took, we have seen results in Boolean complexity, and we have taken inspiration and proved results in algebraic complexity. For example, this omega n square lower bound is actually an argument which actually is lifted from Boolean complexity and put in algebraic setting. Of course, it's a different basis, but
yeah. So if you allow RT gates, then I believe that. So I'm not sure, but I think that you only get the quadratic lower bound even in the Boolean case, right?
Yes.
Probably, yeah.
So here, the arguments here, like whatever is happening in the Boolean world, it has been replicated using a different measure for algebraic setting and stuff like that. So basically the strategy is now we want to prove lower bounds against restricted models. Again, this is similar to what has been going on in Boolean circuits. So in Boolean circuits, we actually looked at, back in 80s, we looked at AC0, AC0 parity, AC0 modem, and all these are like constant depth circuits with, so after every step, we're actually adding a bit of complexity. So once we have AC0, we looked at AC0 parity, then AC0 modem and stuff like that. So similarly, like, the strategy here is we want to prove lower bounds against restricted models, learn something and extend it to general setting. And here in this restricted settings, we actually showed some good lower bounds, and we're hoping to improve upon that. So in this talk, I'm going to talk about one particular restriction where there is a bound on the individual degree of polynomials computed. So here, like previously I said, we want to compute polynomials by taking advantage of cancellations. So suppose I want to compute a multilinear polynomial, and I would like to take advantage of cancellations. That means I could actually intermediately compute terms of higher degree. So suppose I have a multilinear polynomial. Probably I could compute a multi-quadratic as an individual degree 2 terms and then cancel at the output. So I could take advantage of this in the algebraic setting. This is what we set out to prove in algebraic setting. So let me define something, a notion of formal degree for a circuit, saying the formal degree of a circuit represents what the degree of the output would have been if there were no cancellations. So that means my circuit could potentially compute an individual degree 10 polynomial, but what I want to compute is a multilinear polynomial. So that means I could potentially have higher degree terms and cancel out. But I'm limiting what the maximum individual degree that can be. I'm not allowing an arbitrary high degree computation in between, but I'm limiting what the what the cancellation terms can have, what degree the cancellation terms can have. So I'm going to define something even more, so define it formally in the sense that, so I'm going to define a formal degree for a node as follows. If it's a leaf node, if it is variable, if it is labeled by a variable xi, then the formal degree of that leaf with respect to this variable is 1. Otherwise, it's 0. Similarly, I can define a formal degree of some node with respect to inputs u1 to uk to be the maximum over the formal degrees of its children with respect to the same variable. Similarly, for a product, the formal degree of the product node is summation of the formal degree of its children with respect to the same variable. So here, like this formal degree increases from leaf to root, and this formal degree assumes there are no cancellations. So the degree keeps on increasing from leaf to root. So this is a syntactic structure that we impose on our circuit. And we say the circuit is syntactically multi-array if the formal degree of the output node is at most r. So you start from leaf, which has formal degree 1. Go from leaf to root. On this path, the formal degree increases until up to r, and not more than r. So that is a syntactic restriction that you impose on the circuits. So, and we fix what the value of r is. So for a start, you can fix the value of r to be 1. So that means we are computing multilinear polynomials by multilinear circuits or multilinear formulas. And then once we have like good results when r is equal to 1, we can start proving results when r is greater than 1. So this is like you learn from a restricted setting, and then you keep on improving from, like you start improving rather relaxing your restrictions until the general model. So this is the study. And what is known for, we actually know a lot of things for syntactically multi-array circuits. So can you see? Okay, so here. So we actually know a lot of results for syntactically multilinear circuits, starting with Razi-Odeyov, and then so for formulas, we have strictly superpolynomial low bounds for formulas. So this was first proved by Raz, and then later for Raz and Odeyov, and Dwyer, Malo-Perifel, and Odeyov. Then, if you restrict the depth of the formulas, we also know really strong low bounds. And remember that I said for general arithmetic circuits, we know low bounds which are barely superlinear, which is n log n. In comparison, for multilinear circuits, we know something better, which is quadratic. And this improves upon a result of Raj, Pilka, and Odeyov. The latest result is Alon, Kumar, and Zbolk. And in particular, for constant depth circuits, especially when depth is 4, Raz and Odeyov show a better lower bound than 2 power n power 1 by delta. So in this paper,
in all these cases, do you have better upper bounds without a syntactic restriction?
So when constant degree syntactic, yeah. So for multilinear circuits, it is not syntactic. I mean, you can assume that every node computes a multilinear polynomial when the depth is small. There is no difference. So you don't really assume the syntactic increase in degree, but you assume that every node computes a multilinear polynomial. That is sufficient. These two are equivalent. However, that is not
only for formulas.
Yeah. Sorry, somebody said something.
This is equivalent only for formulas.
Yeah, formulas, yes. So, okay, so when I'm, so I cannot say the same thing about circuits when I have like barely polynomial low bounds, but when you have super polynomial low bounds, I think I can, for constant depth, I can consider circuits and formulas to have roughly the same size because omega is in the exponent. So yeah, so I cannot say that syntactic multilinearity and just multilinearity are the same for circuits, but formulas, yes. That is clear? Moving on, yeah. So also there is limits of, for multilinear circuits, we also know that the depth reduction of Brent, where he showed all formulas without loss of generality can be assumed to be of log depth. And it is known that you cannot do better than the log depth for formulas without any blow-up in size. So basically depth reduction says, if you give me a circuit of size S, I can reduce it to depth log S with only a poly blow-up. And now, recently it was shown that it is optimal. The result of Brent is optimal. And similarly, we know circuits are more powerful than formulas. So this was shown by Raz. And then even you can get a finer separation that level by level, that the circuits are more powerful than formulas. Similarly, branching programs are formulas. Programs are more powerful than formulas. So branching programs are structures which lie halfway between trees and circuits, like full blown. Let me not go into more details. So they lie somewhere between circuits and formulas. So it was shown by Dvir, Maloo, Perifel, and Yehudayev that algebraic branching programs are more powerful. Further, we know that general multilinear formulas are more powerful than multilinear formulas at small depth. So let me make a point saying that we started out saying that first we'll prove low bounds for multilinear setting, then we'll prove low bounds for general setting. So now this separation tells you that multilinear formulas, low bounds for multilinear formulas at small depth do not imply low bounds for general circuits. However, we know strong low bounds in this setting. Maybe we'll learn from these low bounds and prove better low bounds when R is greater than 1. So we also know this hierarchy. So we know that we even know finite hierarchy of formulas with respect to product of delta and product of delta minus 1. So what do you mean by powerful? That means there exists a polynomial which can be computed efficiently by formulas of product of delta, but not so by formulas of product of delta minus 1. So similarly, there is a hierarchy in size which says there are formulas of size S. There are polynomials that can be computed by formulas of size S. So let's say set S to be n power order 1. So there exists explicit polynomials that can be computed by formulas of size S, but not by formulas of size root S and small depth. So we understand a lot of things for multilinear formulas and circuits. However, the general multilinear low bounds are still quadratic. So now, what happens when R is greater than 1? So we know that if you consider formulas, so in these formulas, so we in particular, we consider this homogeneous formulas. So homogeneous formulas are those formulas where every node computes a homogeneous polynomial. So at every node, you're computing a homogeneous polynomial, and the output also is a homogeneous polynomial. In such a setting, you have really good low bounds. And similarly, you have low bounds for constant depth homogeneous formulas. However, the focus of this talk is depth for multi-array circuits. So here, what we say is consider a depth for multi-array circuit, and it computes a multilinear polynomial. So what was known before is Kayal, Saha, and Tavenas, what they've shown is they've shown a low bound of roughly n power omega root d by r. And so this is exactly, so we'll talk more about this. And I should also mention that if you're computing a multi-array polynomial by syntactically multi-array circuit, then you have better low bounds. So, but our focus of this talk is computing multilinear polynomials by syntactic multi-array circuits, and in particular of depth 4. So let me actually tell you what this depth 4 model is in particular. So this depth 4 circuit computes polynomials of the form which can be expressed as sums of products of polynomials. So this is the structure of your circuit. Further, again, recalling the definition, what we said, a depth 4 circuit C is said to be syntactically multi-array if the output node has a formal degree at most R with respect to each of its variables. So let me simplify this definition for you. So let me say, so let's take one term Ti. Let it be a factor of polynomials Q1 to Qd. All that we're saying, all that syntactic multilinearity says is every variable, if you take any variable, it appears in at most R many factors. Further, if you take individual degrees of each of these polynomials, each of these factors, they sum up to at most R. So this is all that we need. So a variable xk does not appear in more than R many factors here. And the sum of individual degrees is at most R amongst all these factors. So this is all that. So I'm just simplifying what this multi-arraycity for depth 4 is in terms of a very simple definition. So if I say syntactic multilinearity, that means a variable appears only in one of the factors. And there is also a motivation to study depth 4 circuits. In particular, they say proving strong low bounds against restricted depth 4 circuits imply low bounds against general arithmetic circuits. This has been studied in various settings. So against bounded finite circuits and multi-array depth 4 circuits. So however, our lower bounds are really far from what needs to be proven. And there is a set of community which also believes that this chasm is a good structural result, but low bounds might not follow through this approach. So basically, there's a good reason to study depth 4 circuits is all I wanted to say. So let me again look at the result of Kayal, Saha, and Tavenas that I mentioned. So they were computing an explicit multilinear polynomial Q of n comma d over nd variables and degree d. And for a particular range of d, they show that any multi-array depth 4 circuit, syntactically multi-array depth 4 circuit, computing it must have a size roughly n power omega root d by r. So I'm just copied whatever is known a bit more formally. So first, let's see what this explicit polynomial is. So this explicit polynomial is what we call the iterated matrix multiplication polynomial. So basically it is nothing but you take D matrices, generic matrices, that is every entry in this matrix is a variable. It's a distinct variable. And you take the product of these matrices, x1 to xd, and the polynomial is nothing but the 1, 1 entry of the output of the product matrix. So it's a 1, 1 entry of the product of these matrices. And if you look at it as a sum of monomial structure, it is a very nice structure. So what is also known is iterated matrix multiplication polynomial can be expressed as determinant of a ND cross ND matrix. That means IMM is a related polynomial of determinant. And thus, if you show a lower bound for IMM, it also implies a lower bound for determinant. That is, if determinant is a circuit of size S, since IMM can be expressed as determinant, IMM also has a circuit of size S. On a converse, if I show a low bound for low bound for IMM, that also implies a low bound for determinant. So that means proving low bounds for IMM also implies low bounds for determinant. So now let's again look at the formal statement, which says there exists a range of degree such that IMM n comma d, when computed by a syntactically multi-array depth first circuit, that circuit must have size roughly n power root d by r. I'm just repeating the same. So if you stare at this particular bound carefully, what happens is if you keep on increasing the value of r, this bound deteriorates. Further, you are restricted to have the individual degree r bound by smaller of d. So now it's a natural question to ask, can you get rid of these two restrictions? Can you prove a low bound that does not deteriorate while increasing the values of r, and at the same time, it holds for values of r that is greater than d? So this is a natural question, and we actually show that. So in the first attempt, what we show is for a specific instance of d. So recall that the degree range for Kayal-Saha and Tavenas is really large, between log square and almost sublinear. So what we show is for a specific instantiation of d, and r that is almost sublinear, we show a bound that does not deteriorate with r. So let's compare both the results for very, very small range of d. So in this particular range, if we set d is theta log square n, the low bound of Kayal-Saha and Tavenas actually gives a bound of n power omega log n by root r. That means my r can at most be log square n. So that means I'm only able to show low bounds for circuits which have formal degree at most log square n. And the low bound deteriorates as the value of r increases and it gets closer to log square n. In comparison, so we give a bound that does not change with increasing values of r, however, for a very, very specific instance of d. So we solve a part of the problem in the sense that we wanted to show a low bound that does not deteriorate with r and holds for a larger regime of r, but we could only show it for a specific instance of d, unlike Kayal-Saha and Tavenas, unlike the previous results. However, it is satisfactory that our result holds for r, which is much larger than d. So earlier this year, what we have done is we actually show the following result. So we actually extend our result, the previous result, to all d, which are almost sublinear, and all r, which are almost sublinear. And we show that for any syntactically multi-array depth first circuit that computes IMM n comma d for this range of d and r must be of size n power root d. So for this range of d and r, we actually get a low bound which is n power omega root d instead of n power omega root d by r. So that means so basically this extends the previous known result. So we make a point that the range of d for which Kayal-Saha and Tavenas give low bounds is slightly larger than what we show. However, we prove a low bound that is quantitatively better and that does not deteriorate with r. Further, this holds for a range of individual degree that is at least d. So this is the main theorems. So one offshoot of this is we show that there exists an explicit polynomial Qn that can be computed by depth phi circuits which are syntactically multi-array. But any depth for syntactically multi-array circuit, computing it must have super polynomial size. So we give a separation between depth 5 and depth 4 syntactically multi-array circuits. So Further, as I mentioned before, we also get, because of the relation between IMM and determinant, we also get low bounds for determinant. So this is the results we have. And let me just broadly tell you how these results generally get proved, at least in the multi-array setting. So let's look at tools and techniques. So this tools and techniques, how the broad theme of this tools and techniques is as follows. We define a measure, complexity measure for a polynomial such that the following happens. If the polynomial that is being computed by a small depth-4 multi-array circuit or your computational model, it is computed by a small depth-4 circuit, then the measure should be small. However, for a polynomial of interest, the measure should be large. So basically here you're arriving at a contradiction saying, if the measure for my polynomial is large and the measure for my circuit model is small, then it cannot be computed by a small circuit. So that's a broad theme. And this is a theme which is also prevalent in Boolean circuit complexity. And we actually define a complexity measure that we call projected shifted skew partial derivatives, which is a mouthful. And this complexity measure is related to shifted partial derivative. It's an amalgamation of all the known complexity measures. So it's a hybrid of all these complexity measures that are known before. So let me just give you a snapshot of what happens. So 1 second. Yeah, sorry.
So is this also a rank measure?
Yeah.
So is this also
it's a rank measure, yes. So in particular, suppose we have depth-4 circuit, as I said, it can be expressed as sum of product of polynomials. So here we take, it's a sum of product of polynomials. Further, let us define a measure. Suppose we define a measure gamma, says that gamma is defined to be measure of a gamma is defined to be dimension of a suitable vector space that is related to the polynomial in question. Then the measure for the circuit can be written as it's at most S times the maximum of the measure for each of the summits. So this is just a linear algebraic argument. This is a subadditivity of dimension of vector spaces. And if the polynomial f is being computed by the circuit C, then it must be the case that the measure for circuit and the measure for the polynomial are the same. Because it's the same, the output is the same. So now if we combine both of these statements, what we get is that the top famine, rather the number of summands, is at least the measure for the polynomial by the maximum possible measure for a product of polynomials. So this is the broad theme for almost every depth-4 result that is known in the last 10 years. And the entire onus of proving this result is about defining this complexity measure and then showing that the complexity measure for the product of polynomials, this term Q and this term Ti, is not too large. And at the same time, there exists an explicit polynomial f such that the measure for the polynomial is much larger than the measure for this product of polynomials. So this is a snapshot of argument for depth-4 circuits. So whatever be the difference, that is, however be the difference, that gives you what S is. So let me just define what the shifted partial derivatives are. So basically, first, for a given polynomial f, we define a space of partial derivatives of order k. Then this space of polynomials is multiplied by set of monomials of degree at most L. So this is nothing but, these are shifts of partial derivatives. And now, what they consider is, they consider the dimension of the F-linear space that is spanned by these polynomials. Now this is a vector space over polynomials. And now this is the dimension of a vector space. So now your subadditive and everything goes through. So using this measure, what Gupta, Kamath, Kayal, and Saptarishi, what they've observed is consider a term T, which is the product of polynomials Q1 to QD. If D is small and Qij's are polynomials of low degree, then we can get a very good bound on the measure for the product of polynomials. And at the same time, they show that there exists an explicit polynomial f such that the measure for the polynomial is much larger than the measure for the term T, thus getting a lower bound as per the strategy that I've described. So let's see what happens in case of multi-array circuits, syntactic multi-array circuits. So if you look at the product of polynomials Q1 to QD, one observation is that every variable appears in at most R of the factors. So every variable appears in at most R of the factors, and there are n variables. So thus, D can at most be n times R. So now we know that there are fewer polynomials, and then we can reduce. We do not know what the structure of these polynomials is. These polynomials could be really high degree. So what we also observe is, if you take random restrictions, you can reduce high degree polynomials to low degree polynomials. So now, after random restrictions, we have a product of polynomials, each of which is low degree, and we have at most n times R of them. However, like when you apply shifted partial derivatives, this n times R is not small enough. N times R is not small enough. So basically what Kayal Saha and Tavanos do is, they make another observation in the sense that you take a variable x, partition it into two disjoint sets, y and z, such that the number of variables in y is much larger than the number of variables in z. And let's look at the restricted term rho of t. Under renaming, let's first write polynomials Q1 to Qt, such that these polynomials depend on z variables and these depend on y variables. So from syntactic multi-arraycity, we know that T is bounded. So the number of polynomials that depend on z variables is small. So now, if we could adapt our measure to only consider these polynomials and still give a good, so small enough measure, then we are good. So this is exactly what they do. So they say, now partition your variables x into y and z such that y part is much bigger than z part. So this is what you've seen in the last slide. What they do is they take partial derivatives of order k, then set all y variables to 0, and then shift only by z variables. That means, so they're effectively only using these polynomials. So thus what they get is the measure for the term is much smaller than the measure for the polynomial. So under a suitable random restriction, rho, and chosen values of k and l, they get this bound. So they show that the measure for restriction of polynomial is much larger than the measure for restriction of the term. And thus they get a low bound of n power omega root d by r. However, we wanted to improve upon this. That means this definition is not sufficient. So we need to do an even finer analysis. So this final analysis says, like, the polynomial, we started out with a multilinear polynomial. If you take partial derivatives of multilinear polynomial, those are multilinear polynomials themselves. And suppose if you're taking shifts using monomials of degree at most L, these could potentially lead to non-multilinear polynomials. So one thought could be, what happens if we just look at polynomials that are generated which are multilinear? So the structure is maintained. So now what we do is you take partial derivatives, shift them with z variables, and only look at the span of multilinear projections of these polynomials. And this is just a careful analysis. So you're just like refining your space further and further. You had a large space of shifted partial derivatives. You cut the space into partial derivatives which are skew. Then again, you should cut the space of partial derivatives which are only multilinear. So this is like refinement of your measure one after the other. using this measure, we get a lower bound, which is, by doing a careful analysis, we get a lower bound, which is n power root d. Again, as I said, so this is a very new, like, designing random restrictions is not too hard. So in the first case, we actually do the analysis for both the results, result 1 and result 2 are different. And in the first case, we use uniform and independent random restrictions that did not help us to go beyond what was proven. Then we use random restrictions, which are extensions of Kumar and Saraf. So basically, so the harder part is to show that the measure is really large for the polynomial of interest. And this actually is a refined analysis of Kumar and Saraf, where they prove low bounds for IMM for homogeneous depth 4 circuits. They show exponential low bounds for homogeneous depth 4 circuits computing IMM and comma D. So we do a careful analysis of that and obtain what we need. So this is broadly the, so there are a lot of details. This part has a lot of details, and this part is the major chunk of the paper. So that is where I want to stop with respect to this. And I can, so what is the further work? So, of course, you want to prove better low bounds against multi-array depth 4 circuits, because we want to see better low bounds. So there is one thing I've mentioned. I've mentioned this result in multi-array setting, where the formulas, where homogeneous formula low bounds are shown. So I showed a lower bound of n power omega log n for homogeneous multi-array formulas. And this low bound was shown when the circuit structure is syntactic multi-array and the polynomial is multi-array. So when you're computing homogeneous polynomial with homogeneity restriction and syntactic multi-arity, it is akin to monotone computation. So it's almost as if no cancellations are happening. So can we do better than that? So can we weaken the model of this computation in the sense that can we compute multi-aric R-1 polynomials using homogeneous multi-aric formulas for a start? Or weaken restrictions of homogeneity or syntactic multi-aricity. So the other question is, like, as I think, was it Amir who pointed out, and in the sense that for multilinear formulas of small depth or multilinear formulas, syntactic multi-aricity and multi-aricity are the same. Multilinearity and syntactic multilinearity are the same. However, when R is greater than 1, it is not known whether they are the same. Is there a power loss or is there a power gain? That we do not know. And another important question here is identity testing of circuits. So that is where I would like to stop here.
Okay, so let's thank the speaker.
Thank you for
listening, everybody. Yeah, so any questions for this night talk? Any questions? So maybe I'll be the first. So we've seen a lot of variants of this method of partial derivatives. Do you think there's more to look for in that direction, or is something really new needed?
So I think at the end of the day, I think you cannot expect anything spectacular from it anymore. So all you can do is right now is like do a finer and finer analysis, and okay, so you can do an incremental work, and if you want to do something spectacular out of, I think you need to look for a better measure. And also there is this thing that, like, there are this, what do you call, barrier results which say that, like, rank methods do not give super polynomial low bounds and stuff like that. So yeah. So however, like, we do not know. So they actually say that you cannot show low bounds of a particular form. But what is known and what is what can't be proved, there's a large gap in between. So maybe this rank methods can reach until there. And then maybe beyond that you need. So there are two schools of thought. it's a waste of time even to think about this, or you only think about things that lie beyond it. Even there is a school of thought which says this like entire chasm is like pointless. So,
cynics. And any other questions? Okay, so I think we don't have that many experts in the audience except for maybe Amir. So let's thanks Regit again. Next week we're going to have a crypto talk by, it's very surprising, Ariel Gabilan, who used to be at the Technion and now is at large. I'm not even sure like which country he's in right now. He used to be in Poland sometime. So we'll figure out next week. So thanks everybody.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks.
Very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.